A mansion near a lake south of Berlin is accepted by most historians to be the place where the organization of the final solution was planned.
It's a very moody, atmospheric sort of place. Something has seeped into the soil or into the brickwork there. It's quite easy to imagine this conference in the winter with the big black Mercedes waiting outside and the chauffeurs waiting and the civil servants and the uniformed Gestapo and SS men coming out, having had lunch, I believe. And you could see then the way in which a modern European sophisticated state could descend into this kind of Al Capone style gangsterism. It's a very haunting place. The significance of the Wannsee Conference was really, that was the point at which everyone was painted with the same brush. They all dipped their hands in the blood.
On January the 20th, 1942, Reinhard Heydrich, chief of the Nazi Security Service, summoned a meeting of 15 Nazi functionaries, including Adolf Eichmann, to gather here. The entry of America into the war in December 1941 meant that the bureaucrats were gathering to discuss how best to fulfill Hitler's prophecy of the extermination of all 11 million Jews in Europe.
I think Wannsee was a conference which came at a point where Himmler and the racist apparatus had already begun a program of what one might call the rationalization of racism. I think that Himmler and others were shocked in the end by the brutality and violence of the wild killings across the summer, and were keen to bring the whole thing under control. It was very much Himmler's habit, of course. He liked order, he liked to have rational structures for carrying things out. He was very keen to do things the German way. So building up factories of death, extermination camps, liquidating Jews systematically, using bureaucrats as much as soldiers.
Irving disputes what happened at Wannsee. The transcript of the meeting, he insists, contains no reference to liquidation or to Hitler's approval. It was, he says, a low-level conference concerned with a shift in Nazi policy towards the Jews from deportation overseas to evacuation to the east.
Jetzt Wannsee.
But as one of the principal architects of the final solution, Adolf Eichmann confirmed at his trial in 1961, the talk at Wannsee had all been of killing and liquidation, disguised in the minutes, written by Eichmann himself, but checked over and amended by Heydrich.
Also vielleicht entsinnen Sie sich, was man da gesprochen hat.
Da sind die verschiedenen Tötungsmöglichkeiten besprochen worden.
Verschiedene Tötungsmöglichkeiten.
Jawohl. Klar.
Moreover, Eichmann said, the Wannsee Conference was in fact a high-level meeting of a wide range of senior officials to plan the implementation of the final solution of the Jewish question in Europe.
So in sehr unverblümten Worten die Sache genannt, wie sie eben, ohne sie zu umschreiben.
Early in 1942, the final solution of the Jewish question entered a new and more lethal phase, with the introduction of a technology of mass slaughter.
Himmler visited Minsk and witnessed a mass execution and was very shocked. Allegedly, some brains spattered onto his coat, and he realized that this was imposing quite a burden on the people who were doing it. And he decided that attempts should be made to produce a killing process that was easier for those carrying it out.
Gassing technology had been developed as part of the Nazi program of euthanasia, directed against mentally and physically handicapped people and claiming 70,000 lives. Now it was to be used against the Jews. Mobile gas vans first appeared on the Eastern Front early in 1942. Carbon monoxide was pumped from the van's engines to suffocate the victims locked inside. Irving has previously conceded the existence of these gas vans, acknowledging an eyewitness account from the SS colonel responsible for Jewish affairs, Adolf Eichmann. But he continues to claim that they were used only on an experimental basis. The defense enters into evidence an SS document of June 1942.
Since December 1941, for example, 97,000 were processed by 3 trucks in action without any defects in the vehicles being encountered.
Shall we go straight to the bottom line and say, yes, I fully accept the innuendo you're placing on that document?
Innuendo?
It is not stated clearly, but quite clearly 97,000 people were liquidated in these trucks.
In 3 trucks.
Over the months concerned?
No, actually it was just about a month and a week. 97,000 people in 3 trucks during the course of 5 weeks.
That is a very substantial achievement if you work it out with a pocket calculator.
Clever SS.
But is it very experimental?
My lord, I did not have this document at the time I said that. I had this document 5 or 6 months ago.
To answer the question, even so, would you describe it as very limited and experimental?
Not on this scale. This is systematic.
It is systematic. Huge scale. Using gas trucks to murder Jews.
Yes, no question at all. But you have failed to establish the link upwards to Hitler.
I do not imagine that Himmler, at that stage, could have even thought of acting independently of the Führer. As he himself said, his whole life had been, his whole program had been based on loyalty to the Führer. The idea that Himmler had an independent policy, I think, is absurd. There's no question in my mind that the policy came from Hitler.
I think only the most amateurish of researchers could believe that in a political setup like the Third Reich, every action that took place was authorized from above by a written order. This was a criminal regime that was aware it was engaging in criminal acts. It played fast and loose with the law. And there are a series of other orders given by Hitler that we know about, which were never actually put on paper. These were known as Führer wishes. His underlings would turn up at a place and say it is the will of the Führer that something should happen, and everybody knew exactly what that meant. There was an order from on high. It was not to be written down. What we would call today complete deniability was to be preserved.
There are no orders. They've not been found. We've been in the archives, in and out of the archives of the world for the last 50 years, since the end of World War II.
The case is not that there is a piece of paper from Himmler to Hitler saying, "Here, Adolf, are the statistics." The case is simply this. The scale of the operation is vast. It must have involved what must have been very considerable disruption to military operations, amongst other things. It involved a lot of economic and manpower resources. In the light of what we do know that Hitler did know, in the light of all the information we have about Hitler's anti-Semitism, and as one of the foundations of Nazi ideology, it would be amazing if Hitler did not know, in broad terms. I'm not saying he was interested in numbers or anything like that. What was going on?
The European-wide genocide against the Jews reaches its climax in 1942. The ghettos of Poland are systematically emptied out. The great centres of population, Lublin, Lodz, Warsaw. It's also during this year that the roundups begin in France, the Netherlands, Belgium. All over Europe during 1942, Jews are being counted, listed, marked with the yellow star, rounded up, then loaded on trains and sent eastwards, most of them murdered on arrival.